Got my fancy pineapple drink.
What?
I said I got my fancy pineapple drink. I'm all ready.
Whoa, nice. Hello, we're here with Casey and their fancy pineapple drink. Casey, check out my shirt. What do you think of this?
Dude, that's awesome. The
Is it the
Vitruvian Man
Vitruvian Man playing guitar?
playing guitar, giving a strum. That's awesome.
Yeah. It shows how rock and roll it can be some kind of astrological doctor.
And then what do you got on here? Are you
Oh,
a
and then I got
bone?
some bones over here, so
Nice.
I'm dressed for the occasion.
Oh, I want that shirt. I need one of those.
Yeah. So today, we are here to talk about psychosomatics, right? We're going to talk about everything mental, emotional, physical, and all those tie-ins. Is that what you understand our episode to be about today?
Yes, he planted that seed at the end of the last episode.
Nice. Well, okay, well, should we start out with defining what is psychosomatic anyway?
Oh, yeah, you mean kind of like the clinical definition?
Yeah, like when you think of psychosomatic, what do you think of?
Okay, so a clinical answer would be something along the lines that the things you think can manifest as into diseases or disruptions in the body. So it's just really like a connection, another way to talk about mind-body connection.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Okay, I'm looking it up also.
Yeah,
You're just thinking it's like one way to say it is if you think something like you think I have a heart condition, I have a heart condition, I have a heart condition, I then you all of a sudden you have a heart condition.
yeah.
Okay. So this
I
says
think that's how it gets used a lot.
okay. So it says of a physical illness or other condition caused or aggravated by a mental factor such as an internal conflict or stress. So could if you had a headache and it was caused by mental stress, would that be psychosomatic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a physical manifestation of uncomfortable from mental duress.
Okay. It also says relating to the interaction of mind and body. So we can also say it's everything with the mind-body connection, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, how much of illness do you think is mental? Like what percent?
Well, if I took a page out of my dad's book, he would say all of it.
What's your dad's
He,
book?
what's my dad's what?
What's your dad's book?
Oh, no, I mean like his life philosophy. He,
Oh,
like, if you talk about at any level, like you don't feel good or anything that you're just describing that's going on for you, he will immediately shut you down and tell you what you think of you manifest.
okay, interesting. So if
Yeah.
I was like, oh my, I have a broken finger, 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 I can all of a sudden break my finger, according to your dad.
The other, well, no, the other way around, that if you think your finger to be broken, it is, but if you think your finger isn't broken, then it's not.
Interesting.
So, for example, he has diabetes, but he constantly tells himself he's in his perfect state of health and well-being. But he also then takes this into account that like all the choices and decisions that he made because he's alive, that is his perfect state of health, includes diabetes. Now, I don't agree with that. And I think that there are behavioral things that you can do to change it and make your situation easier. So we actually get into a lot of like when I was home last week, I had the Novo virus, and he's all, "Don't tell yourself you had the Novo virus." I'm like, my body was physically reacting to something that invaded me. You can't tell me I can just think it away when that was my experience.
Hmm.
So I think this whole psychosomatic conversation can be very sensitive for a lot of people. I do think that it is on a scale. You can overthink things and manifest them. That's a lot of where physiatry comes from. How much are you thinking about your pain, and is that catching you in a mental loop? Whereas, how much of it is actual physical pain. And that's an invisible line. And I think everybody's experience is what their experience is and should be validated. So if there is some gray zone, you can pull people out of you're overthinking something. Let's just relate on what's happening physically. Or do you physically have something? And then the more you meditate on it, you're manifesting it further.
Mm. So what is that word you use? Physiatry?
Yeah, a physiatrist is a pain specialist.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because well, so I think there are like limits. So I grew up as a Christian Scientist. My mom was a Christian Scientist, and we learned that you can heal the body with the spirit. So like I'm of the controversial side of your dad, where I'm kind of like, well, your mind, like mind control is so much of like what I learned, right? Is like it's like if we let ourselves think that we're sick with the novovirus, then we are sick with the novovirus, and if we are just like, no, I'm whole and healthy, then the novovirus can't hurt you. You know what I mean? Like I grew up in that belief system. No, my parents aren't really extremists. My dad's an astrophysicist. He's more like go to the doctor and everything like that. Like, but like my chart took on the extreme version of that and like has really looked at things spiritually. That's like my Pisces moon, right? But I do think there are limits to it. Like if I'm like my finger's broken, my finger's broken. I'm like I don't think that my mind will break my finger structurally. Like, you know what I'm saying? But like, what does it mean when somebody's worried sick?
What's it mean when they're worried sick? I think that's like one now you're gonna like tap into a whole different level of physiology and chemistry and hormone release. If you're worried sick, then you've fixated on something and you are in a because the body responds to negative feedback and positive feedback cycles. So if you like the textbook example is the thermostat. If it goes below a certain temperature, then the heater is going to kick on and it's going to raise it into that comfortable zone. It gets too hot, it's going to kick on the air conditioner. So you're always in that zone. So when you get fixated on something, you're kind of pushing the heater to work too hard and produce more. And then your body's having to deal with the fact that you overproduced something and you have to just process, you have to physically process what you've produced. And if you never take your foot off the gas, then you're never going to relieve that production in order for your body to find that balance again.
Hmm.
And I think people that you find that who are overly stressed out, they often end up mineral deficient because that stress is creating an acidic charge in the body. The body's looking for a natural buffering system to kick into play. And the biggest mineral that it uses to buffer out those acids is calcium. So you're breaking down your bones, you're creating other complications, whether it's osteoarthritis or osteoporosis, because if you're stressed out all the time, your body's always looking to buffer it. And at some point, you run out of the buffering agent and it kicks you into high gear of over processing.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, so they say like the gut brain connection is really strong, you know. So like maybe one of the reasons people get worried sick, like it's usually nausea, right? When they're worried is like maybe what do you think of the gut brain connection with that? Do you think if you're mentally going on and on and on, it can affect your nausea center?
That's to me that has two pathways. First of all, I believe that the brain has its own gut. So the brain communicating to the gut, the brain in the gut is kind of creating some dialogue, internal dialogue. And then you have to take into consideration the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is a cranial nerve that lives in the base of the brain in here, and then it connects to your viscera and your organs. So we're always kind of balancing back and forth between the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And one, the easiest way to describe that, one puts you in fight or flight, and the other one puts you in rest and relax. So if you're constantly engaging in that thought process that triggers the flight or fight, then you're going to stay there. And then that's going to create some tension in here, send that signal to the brain, shut everything down,
Hmm.
et cetera, domino effect.
Hmm.
You have nauseous stomach.
Well, and I mean, you know, to talk generally is kind of like not what this show does because we're astrologers on this show. And so it's like, you know, it's like there are certain charts that w when worried would get a sick gut and certain charts that when worried wouldn't get a sick gut. Like, I think, don't you think that the chart has some charts have a pathway that ails the gut and some don't?
Yes. Yeah, like if we're going to be specific about that, I would look to see if the vagus nerve is being affected and innervated through the body, then that lives in the Cancer region. So what's being affected by traveling through the sign of Cancer, or what is that person dealing with in the sign of Cancer that's causing that as the outcome?
Hmm. Well, and like a lot of like intestines are under Virgo, and it's like, the other day in class, because we have that Tuesday class, and it's like we were going through all the body systems this week, and it's like there were several Virgos in class, and they're all talking about their irritable bowel syndrome, and I'm not breaking confidentiality, I'm not saying anyone specific here, but it's like we had like 4 or 5 Virgo people with 4 or 5 gut issues. And it's like Virgo literally lives in that gut issue. And if we look at it to dermatomes, if anyone wonders what a dermatome is, you can look at our last episode where we talk, there's these like near the swaths of skin, and like the Virgo dermatome sits right over those intestines. And if somebody's living in that dermatome, they're going to feel stuff down in their intestines where it's like, my chart has nothing in Virgo. I don't even feel what I eat. I could eat glass. It would just like my body just has no chi in the intestines. Like to really, it doesn't really get stomach aches. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't know. Like I feel
Please
like,
don't eat glass.
well, yeah, come on. I'm in the circus. I might eat some glass. You know, we should look at the chart of that guy, the guys who eat glass in the circus.
Yeah, okay, but different rabbit hole.
Yeah, but like different charts, like let's say somebody had like Uranus and Leo, which is like electricalism through the heart. If they got worried, they might get a palpitating heart. So their worried sick would be heart arrhythmia, right? Whereas a Virgo might get this intestinal thing, or like if somebody has Mars in Taurus, they might get like a sore throat, right? So like the astrologer would say that being worried sick, it really depends on the pathway of your chart where you're going to harbor the sickness.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because that's the map. That's its route, its path. That energy is filtering in through the aura, and then the aura is directing it into that channel that's most receptive to it, and then it's manifesting through the body.
But I think it's interesting how we have these like colloquial phrases like, "Oh, little Sally was worried sick." Like that there is some that is suggesting psychosomatics as a kind of colloquial thing. Like I feel like people know that your mental quality does affect your physical quality.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think comes to the side of what side of it are you on, to being like, um, well, don't overthink it so that you manifest that insert that discomfort, right? Like that's like what my dad's saying. That's what your growing up background is saying. But I think there is a fine line to being disregarding to what's happening in a physical manifestation, even if you have a mental capacity that's creating it. Because
Well,
clearly,
it's like having a car. Let's say you have a car with like a faulty engine mount, and you're like, I'm going to use my powers of manifestation to will this car into health. Like, if there's a structural problem, you're not going like visioning doesn't change structural problems.
right,
I mean, right? Like if you had diabetes and you were just like, I will myself to be healthy, but you're not like you're not actually d dealing with your insulin issue, like you might die.
right,
Okay.
right.
So you
Yeah.
don't believe everything can be healed psychically.
Um, well, my phrasing is you need to create the right environment for the body to do its job. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening underneath it. I have no idea. But I know that I do have a part in what happens with that. So if I can keep my stress levels down and I can keep my immune system up, I'm going to be in better health than if I'm constantly stewing on something. And to me, that's like personally, like it's a I've been reading a lot out of this book. Where did it just go? Called the Power of Characteristic in Leadership, and it's talking a lot about this internal sense of conviction and values. And so, where are you placing your stress, and what can you control? And oftentimes, there's so much in the external that we spend time on that we can't control. that takes our stress levels up here when the only environment I can control is this one that is within my being. And then I can, then, you move into the thing to being like, are you a reactive person? Are you a responsive person? If you're responsive, you have a few filters in place that allow you to pause and slow down and interpret your environment compared to something who's just being super reactive and always like on that gasping side or surprised side, or like have no filter of awareness of what's happening. Those people tend to be more stressed out than people who have that internal pause that allows them to process their environment. So I think I don't, it's one of those things. They're intrinsic. They can't be separated. You can talk about them as separate entities, but they work harmoniously together.
Yeah, I love that you brought up that serenity prayer stuff of like there are things within my control and things out of my control. Well, that's also Stoic philosophy is like you're supposed to focus on the things you can control and not the things you can't control, right? So if your engine mount's faulty, control everything you can to make the car strong otherwise. But like then, you got to kind of let it go. But I see what you're saying. Like it's all inextricably wound up and you can't really say, you have to take it on a case by case basis in many ways of like where can manifesting work or like spiritual work help in this case? Where do we need structural work? And I think that's the Virgo Pisces axis, right? Like Virgo, we attack things structurally, and Pisces, we attack things spiritually. And if you do both of those, you really have a truly whole, healthy being. You know,
Yeah.
it would be kind of silly to fix the structural problem and not fix the psychic problem or keep the psychic problem part healthy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Absolutely. And that's why as like a next generation um medical professional, incorporating astrology into this conversation creates a different lens to examine what's happening. And I think it takes that other piece of the puzzle, which makes it's just about you. Like textbook medicine is what you said at the beginning. It's very generalized. Like we have to have this body of people that we extract information and create a common body of knowledge so that we can apply that to the individual. But I think medicine does it in the reverse. They take the individual and they want to put you into this general body of knowledge. And then if you don't fit within that puzzle for them, often they get disregarded. I think one of the things that I like the most about my practice is I get that feedback from my clients. Like, no matter what story that they've heard on the outside from other medical practitioners, they really appreciate that I just pause long enough to hear their story, validate their story and their experience because that's theirs. And even that right there is the beginning of creating a new environment for their body to feel healing take place, because if you don't feel like you're being heard, then you get caught up in your mind that like, am I going crazy? And why doesn't my doctor understand me? And there's supposed to be this professional who's inviting this healing space, but if they're limited in their thinking, then I think that's the disservice that we have in kind of this big system that we're a part of, that we have right now. And why I really love bringing astrology into the conversation, because then it makes it so unique to what that person is what they're saying. Can you see it in the chart? In the chart, can you follow the map to help them be a little bit more direct and have move the needle in a way that makes them feel validated and feel the healing power that they activate within themselves? I'm just a facilitator of that. Let me be super clear. I'm
Mhm.
not a fixer, I'm a facilitator.
Yeah. I think what's so powerful, you and I working together on cases, is I'm a Pisces moon and you're a double Virgo. And so it's like we'll take the same illness case and like I'll attack it spiritually and you'll attack it physically. And you have that Jupiter in Pisces, so you also attack it spiritually. But like we'll attack it from both sides and then the person feels like they've really been attended to and they can kind of, rise up with their situation, whatever that is. And I think that it'd be cool if people could have a Pisces and a Virgo on every situation, I just think of all the doctor's offices full of Virgo stuff. It's like white and blue squares are very Virgoic, and like all the bandages are like these white and blue squares. I'm like, it is Virgo down in here. Everything's all clean line and spreadsheet. It looks like a big spreadsheet in here, like, whatever. But it's like, but then a church is like very Piscean, right? Like where you like go in and be faith healed, right? Like, so it's like, I think maybe we can even extrapolate for people in general. If you have a case of an illness, have a doctor look at it, but also have a faith person look at it and like, you could, we could say that that could be a template for holistic healing in all cases,
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so tell the viewers about when you work on people physically and the emotions come up because you're a body worker, so you're in their fascia and you're in their connective tissue and you're deep tissue massaging them. And you said they have all kinds of like emotional reactions. Let's talk about like when you release something physically, when it releases emotionally.
Yeah, I think this is interesting. I don't know if it's the nature of the solid earth of the double Virgo, but I have the tendency to hold space really well. So I hear from a lot of other practitioners that like, oh, this patient was crying on my table or they were doing this. So I don't have people emote strongly in my presence. But I often get a sense when we tap into something, and then I'll tell them that, like, obviously this is a safe space. You can emote how you need to. Um, there's a fine line in the threshold between tickle and pain, and often people are like, "Oh, that's tickly," and they want to laugh, but uh they they feel a little embarrassed by letting this emotion expression out. And I'm like, you just gotta let it out. Like laughing is that energy that's trapped, and maybe it's a different way, and if you were more in a different environment it might be crying energy. But I'll have people, as we work through things, if I get a sense, I'll definitely mention to people, we dug into something today and I just get the sense that this might be emotional for you. I don't know how that's going to manifest later, but just be gentle with yourself whatever comes up, and be mindful that something might come up. I don't know how to exactly describe what it is, but it's like maybe if you have a trigger point that's really like it feel that one that feels really good to get to, and you work on it and you work on it. Well, at some point when we deal with stress and tension in the body, like your brain numbs out the signal. So that's why it kind of feels good to kind of dig in there and get at it. But at any point, you can work on a point long enough and it'll click over and it'll get super sensitive really fast to being like, ow, get out of there, stop touching me. And so that is kind of a spectrum of what you can experience, to being like, how have you blocked yourself from experiencing that sensation, those feelings? And then when they are activated and it gets a little sensitive and tender, I don't tend to dig too much after somebody kind of acknowledges that feels worked. But that's when I'm like, I don't know what that's going to release for you later. So just be mindful of how that's going to feel. And often I just encourage people to be gentle and patient with themselves.
Mhm. Um,
Anger can come up too. Anger
oh
might
yeah.
make you frustrated and angry later.
Huh. Interesting. Well, okay, it makes me think of a case. Now, we're not breaking confidentiality because we're not saying who the case was, but remember we had that case of the Sun Mars Uranus conjunction in Cancer, and she had ADD really bad, and like her energy was like Cancer lives up in the waters of the chest, and Sun Mars will inflame the area. So it's like it was an inflamed waters of the chest, and then Uranus makes it like really electrical. So like her energy was like really kind of inflamed and constantly like moving around in this like electrical fashion. And Casey did this cupping on the back of this person, and we saw the line. Like there was like red starting at the Cancer region, and then it went all the way up. And like you cupped the whole back and you pulled out all this red. And her energy, I was in the room with you guys, and her energy went from like this to like all of a sudden she didn't have
Yeah.
ADD anymore. She was like, you had pulled out all the electrical inflammation that was basically that Sun Mars Uranus conjunction, and we could see the line, and like basically her energy, it healed the ADD issue that was, I mean,
Right, because she was so electric, she didn't have a way to express it, and we pulled it out. And if I remember correctly, we were cupping the line kind of over the ribs like this, and then we went just lower to see if it would pull up energy, and it didn't. And to
yeah,
being like, this is a clear delineation that this line is being affected.
yeah, it was like right when we got to the Mars and Cancer line, the red was there, and below that was like nothing. It was like it was crazy. But
Yeah.
that's where, I want to get to the question of, are things just in someone's head? We recently had this come up in class where someone had been told by doctors, like, oh, this is just in your head. And I'm like, how often do doctors say that when they actually can't figure out what the issue is?
Okay, so my question response to that is, where is the head? in the body.
Whoa. Where
Right?
exactly?
I think that goes back to a little bit of this like I feel like this is this interesting fact in medical history. In the medical history class, when it was like the 300, 400 AD, so we're kind of like around the Hippocrates time when he was doctoring and astrologing. And they science wanted was an emerging field and they wanted to start performing autopsies. But they had to go to the church and ask what they could work on because they were uncertain on where the soul resided. So the church was like, well, the eyes are the windows to the soul. So put a sheet over the top of the head and just work on the lower rest of the body because they didn't feel like they were getting into God's territory. Okay, so that's a very rudimentary thought considering that that was like what 1700 years ago. Fast forward, add all the science. Now you got all these mental sciences, brain sciences, brain surgeries that they're doing to look. I mean, I feel like even I have a friend's dad who was part of the neuro chip team that was working on creating connection if you had a paralyzed hand to like reestablish connections. So we're doing all sorts of crazy stuff with the brain now. Why? Because just time has gone on, but it did create a gap on what we know about the mind and how it affects the body. And I think that's also translated in medical doctor schooling because they're so fixated on their region or their speciality that they don't really remember that there's this bridge that exists and that the brain is the ultimate control center of everything that happens south in the neck. Like there's a nerve connected to every, I mean, this is how phenomenal it is. There is a nerve, a vein, and an artery connected to every cell in the bone. Not just the bone, but every cell in the bone. That's because the brain needs to take inventory on everything that's happening in the body. So, how can it just be in your head? Your head is cognitively taking all this information back here and funneling it into your prefrontal cortex to try to make cognitive sense of it so that you can describe it to somebody to express what's happening to you. And I think when doctors tell that to people, that's where they disregard people and create that they fuel the psychosomatic and create this colloquial isms about things that it's all in your head. It's not going to get any better. It's all going to be downhill from here. You got to figure it out. And ultimately, I think they should have the guts to say, I don't know. Let's keep going. Let's send you to a different specialist. Let's keep asking more questions.
Well, I mean, no offense, but it's like I think doctors, okay, we're astrologers, you and I, right? We ever had a case where like we can't figure it out? Every case we've gotten, we've been able to like suss out something in the physical body that could be contributing to this issue. Like we never say that's just in your head. We say, "Oh, I can see that it's in your dermatomes, like your so for example, I had a case the other day of this girl um confidentiality intact. Okay. But she was having heart pain, palpitation, heart pain. And the doctors have looked in the body, can't find anything in the heart, and it's like when I look at the chart, it's all down in the veins, the Aquarius region, and Saturn and Aquarius, things like that. And it's like I'm like Googling can blocked circulation because Aquarius is the circulation of the veins. It's not the heart itself, it's the circulation. I'm like, can blocked circulation cause heart pains? Found all this stuff of yes, it can. Like, and then I was asking her, I was like, well, do you have tension in your lower butt? Like, and she's like, absolutely, 100%. I was like, okay, what if we had circulation blockage that was dealing with this, like, I can't breathe feeling and like all this stuff. And the point is like, I never would have said like, that's just in your head. What I do is go sleuthing out the machine and saying like, well, what about this? Or what about this? Or the machine's built this way. It's like, it's like, we don't like give up because it doesn't make sense or it's cyclical. It's like you and I deal with cyclical expressions of things. Like the person cyclically can't breathe or they cyclically have heart. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we don't say, oh, it's just in your head because it's coming in cyclically. I just feel like you
Right.
and I are way beyond it's just in your head because we know it's in the
Yeah.
dermatomes, and
Well, and you also know that where you feel it is not where it's originating from. Usually it's like um a secondary or a tertiary alarm system that's more sensitive that brings it to your mind's awareness because of how resilient we are as creatures and beings. that a lot of stuff stays below the threshold because we have to maintain our cognitive function. And cognitive function tends to rise above physical discomfort until it gets so loud, you have to pay attention to it.
Well, that's like how women can give birth and still be talking. You know, it's like they have this baby ripping their flesh open and they're still talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like cognitive function does override this physical stuff. I see what you're saying is like we cognitively are aware so that we can get the help we need. Like we have to like communicate, and to get, but yeah, like it's just in your head. It's not what we mean by psychosomatics. Like you and I are not saying to clients, oh, this problem is just in your head. We're saying the dermatomes. This brings me to this next comment. You remember Galen, the ancient doctor, like do you know who Galen was? He was like I think he was an ancient. Let's look up Galen. Hold on.
Yeah. While you do that, let me add like psychosomatic to a medical astrologer is a connection to the mind body in identifying that path for you as a relationship between problem area and what the solution can be.
That's the dermatomes are?
No, I think that's how we as medical astrologers can define psychosomatic. Like it's not stuck in your head. It's part of the pathway to understand what's
Interesting.
happening.
So Galen was a Roman and Greek physician, surgeon, and philosopher. He was considered to be one of the most accomplished of all medical researchers of antiquity. He influenced the development of various scientific disciplines, including anatomy, physiology, pathology, pharmacology, neurology, and philosophy. Okay.
What years?
He was 129 to 216 AD.
Okay.
And what he would say is the mind's inclination follows the body's temperature. The mind's inclination follows the body's temperature. So, an example of this would be like if someone's feverish, let's say their body's really hot, that gives them like they're hot under the collar. Like if someone's hot, they're more likely to be aggravated or angry than if they're cold, for
Mhm.
example. Like they find that Inuits or Eskimos like hardly ever fight. Like there's like never wars in the cold territories because like the body's temperature is so cold that the mood is cool and collected, right? But if they get warm, they're hot and angry kind of thing. So I feel like with dermatomes, it's like if we have like let's say our intestines are inflamed because we have Mars and Virgo, and so someone's got like IBS and they're like, everything I eat makes my intestines inflamed. Well, they get really particular and they're just like, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, and but it's like the mind's inclination follows the body's like impetus in the dermatomes. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like once you have awareness of something that's not feeding you the right way in optimal health, then you start to avoid it, right? That kind of where you're going with it because
Well, that
your
would be
body's
the
telling you something, your mind is making a decision
Mhm.
and translating it that way.
Well, that would be like the Virgo thing is like particularism or choicery. But okay, let's say we took Mars in Gemini. You know, that would be like inflammation of the throat chakra. Like how does that affect the personality characteristics is kind of what I'm thinking about is like how does Mars in Gemini and the inflamed throat chakra affect the temperament? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would make somebody like more like a manic or like hyperthyroidy or talkative or like uppy or like it's like that hot thyroid would make a hot mind like kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think, maybe it is the literal aspect of how like, okay, well, what is that nerve connected to? What's the route and the pathway that it's taking to the mind? Then there's the other side, which is like its own individual system that's reacting to those things, which is the endocrine system. And so what role does hormones play in this on how we end up either feeling? I think there's a difference too. Feeling in the body to me, I've defined that as sensation compared to feeling in my mind, my temperament. So sensation and that the other, because feeling can go both ways. How are you feeling? I'm feeling blue. How are you feeling? I'm feeling sick. Okay, so that's one of those like gray words. And so to get a little bit more specific, if you're talking about something from the body, let's talk about sensations. And then the other sense is like my mental faculties of feeling, defining a character of feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think we could say like the sensation created by the soul senses machine of your chart. Like each of us has a different sensory apparatus, and that was what the chart was supposed to build is your sensory apparatus. So it's like, and that affects how we see the world, how we think about the world, what we notice. If somebody's a Virgo, they might notice the dirt on the menu. And if they're a Scorpio, they might notice the hot waitress, right? If we're at a Denny's or something like that. But like, it's like you just like what we notice depends on our sensory apparatus, actually. And that affects
Yes.
our temperament 100%. Is that kind of what
Yeah.
you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Did
Exactly.
no, did you have anything on your list that you wanted to talk about?
Um, I think that I just wanted to really unpack psychosomatic beyond a mental health diagnoses. And I think we're doing that.
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, how can we help people psychosomatically here? I mean, we can say number one, to look at your chart about an issue is psycho and somatic. Like astrology more than anything looks at the whole psychosomatic cluster, like you're talking about. The chart can see into the physical layer, how that affects the emotional layer, the sensory layer, the mental layer. There's a chapter in remediation. It's like on how the chart affects the body physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, or something. It's like how the chart affects all spheres. Like, how do you think of the chart affecting every sphere? Like, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I think that goes back to I'm going to reiterate what I said when you were looking up Galen, and that is that I think medical astrologers can use psychosomatics as a map to map the pathways. When you're looking at somebody's chart and you understand the components of the formula, that's what was revealed to me when we were doing this work at the very beginning. I was like, I hear what I'm reading Judith's work and I'm like, I hear it, I see it, and I can like create um, a map in my mind, but I wanted to see the exactness of it. And that's where we took the work and really took that base work and created the astro body as a map to understand what is the channel that it's going through, what happens when a planet passes through that channel, and that end organ that it's affecting, how is it related? That creates a pathway in which you can look for something in a new and constructive kind of way, to deconstruct what people are experiencing with new vocabulary and a new expression rather than just like, I did these tests, I can't find anything. Maybe that isn't the right test that you need to validate the thing that the person's experiencing. And ultimately, I think that's what it really comes down to for me. I find myself very passionate about just taking some space and letting people share their story and their words and what they're experiencing so that they have validation. If you don't have validation as a part of a component in the medical story, then I don't think we're creating the right environment for the body to do its natural healing work.
Hmm. Yeah. Definitely making a person feel crazy for their symptomology cluster is not, or that they're making it up is like not going to validate and make them want to heal themselves. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
feeling heard and understood will definitely make a person want to heal. Okay, so this is chapter 7. It's remediation as it acts on the physical, mental, and emotional spheres. So I think, astrology acts on all these levels. And it's like, how can something act on all these levels? Well, it's a study of the essential nature of a human. It's like it's like it like radiates from inward out to the outward, and those dermatomes come from inward to outward, and you know what I mean? It gets mind, gets body and dermatomes, and then that extends to mind and spirit. Like it goes inward to outward, I guess, and probably outward to inward. Was it you who said
Yeah.
that the soul lives on the outside of the body?
I don't know that I said that, but because what you're talking about is efferent and afferent nerve. So there's the pathway. There's or because we're sensory beings, we're interpreting everything that's coming in to us, and then that filters inward to the spine. And then at the spinal level, the brain quickly makes a decision based on that sensory input and then expresses something within that comes backward out. So on a mechanical level, that's like, I touch a hot stove. That's hot. Take your hand off. Then you're going to send some cortisol because that was a stressful experience to keep you calm and cool so that you can make rational decisions about what that environment is. I mean, that's a breakdown of like milliseconds,
Hmm.
you
Interesting.
know?
Yeah, I think you and I have long discussed the question of like how the chart gets in the body is like, does it, like a lot of people would say it hits the helix of light that we grow on and then it steps down physically from the helix of light. But then we've also looked at like the light hits the eyes, it goes down the spine, it hits the nerve root, the vertebral body, the nerves that comes out through the sunlight in the spine and how everything's wired. So it's like we don't really know how the chart gets in there. But it definitely comes in through light and electromagnetics or something. I mean, how do you think the chart gets in the body?
Yeah. I mean, this is again, it kind of gets the breakdown of some literal stuff. It's called the study of light. Like when we look at the light, the eyes are the instruments to process photons. Photon is a unit of light and how it's coming in. So what happens when it goes into the body? The amount of cells and all the things that happen within the eye, and then what that translates to into interpretation. Um, your physical environment, all of those things. That's like when we talk about Ptolemy's work to being like an astral body is affected by the region that it develops in. A warm body person is going to experience life a little bit different than a cold body person. So like all of these factors are so important in contributing to how we become who we are. But I think the talking about the layers piece, the aura out here is we're all filtering light all the time. We can't see light because this cell doesn't interpret light, but we can see it in a sense of what's happening here. But I think we would have to show a picture of that thing where the eye comes in and then it crosses and fires up
It's so
through
funny. I
the.
just opened that up. Here's Esoteric Anatomy, the book, The Body is Consciousness by Bruce Berger. But look at this page here. It's saying there's the two eyes and those snakes that go down the spine. And he actually says the ultrasonic core is the nucleus of the body as a field of energy. Energy currents circulate around the potent fulcrum. So that's kind of, eyes down the spine kind of thing. Um,
Yeah. So all that light's traveling down those patterns, and then based on the sign, then that energy is passing through is how it gets expressed. And that's where the map of the termitomes becomes so important because then that's where you can identify the region, insert what is that person experiencing or what are they talking about, and to see if they match up. I mean, that's ultimately I feel like what we do is we're taking a big puzzle and we're trying to solve it.
hmm Yeah, that's what we do. We never say that's just in your mind. We never say things psychosomatically like that. What we are saying is we're going to attack your case physically, spiritually, body, mind. We're going to heal the mind around this case. We're going to heal the body around this case. And in that, you're going to elevate through this issue to be the highest version of you with this issue.
Yeah. And that I think the polarity of that is uncertainty, something I don't know, into does it create some certainty in you? When you're certain about something and you're stable, there's no wavering. But if you're uncertain and you're unsure, you're wavering. And I think that is a really good example of how the how the psychology of the mind really we're never talking about all sorts of things, right? The confidence of a person, your self-worth, your value. There's so many things that determine the whole picture. And that's why I kind of said earlier, it can't be one or the other. We can look at them individually, but at the end of the day, it's a very intrinsic picture. and you have to look at it holistically.
Mhm. Well, I think this is a good place to stop, is to just encourage viewers to say, like, if you guys have a medical case, try to look at it spiritually and physically. And that's psychosomatics at its best, right? Is like attack it from the
Yes.
Pisces fulcrum and the Virgo body and spirit, and then you will be elevated. And if you're more interested in more about what Casey and I are talking about, there's this book, Astro-Somatica. It's available on Amazon, and it's physical astrology. And we actually go into look at all these activities to look into your physical body. With there's activities in every chapter, but you can run your chart through these physical activities in this book. And we set out to make a book where you could actually map out your own chart physically. So that's what this book, Astral Somatica, is all about.
Yeah.
How do people get a hold of you, Casey?
Um, the best way to get a hold of me is, look me up and message me on Facebook. Casey
Casey
Cardoso.
Cardoso, right?
Yeah.
Cardoso.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, thanks for another episode, Casey, and we'll see you next month,
Yeah.
hopefully. Will you come back next
Yeah.
month?
I will. Let's keep attacking these questions. I love them.
All
You can
right.
see I get excited about it. So,
Yeah, we're like BFs, so it's exciting to talk about stuff. All right, I'll give you
sounds
this Vitruvian
good.
Man shirt if you want.
I would.
All right, I'll
I
see
need
you
one.
soon.
Okay.
All right,
Bye.
bye.
See you guys next time.